Hey, Howell here. What I'm going to do today is a review of the movie, the film, 1962, Carnival of Souls. It's a psychological horror directed and produced by Herc Harvey, who plays the ghoul character throughout the film. I'll talk about that as we go through. And it's written by John Clifford. It was a low budget film. It was like $30,000 or something like that at the time. It wasn't particularly popular. It wasn't a box office smash, as they say. But late night viewings, as the years progressed, it caused it to growing in popularity. Now, the reason why this story attracts me so much is that there's a similar story in my life, right? So basically, there was a girl called Justina. She was like a friend of the family. And she was in the passenger seat of a car. And the car went over the bridge. And the man driving, had to hold her head out of the water. And so, and she survived. And so when I saw this film, I identified with that story. So the synopsis is that there are three girls. There will be spoilers all the way through this. There are three girls in the front seat of a car, and it's a light-coloured car, and I believe that is relevant. And we can see that the driver is quite extrovert, and she's game for danger, and she's smoking away, and there are two other girls there. The protagonist, Mary Henry, played by Candace Hilligos, is by the window in the passenger seat. Pulling up beside them is a dark-coloured car with two men in it who tempt them into a drag race. And the driver, who's smoking, accepts and agrees to it, and off they go. And it's a really good introduction to the film, in so much that we get, we see the cars leaving the town and entering the countryside. We have macro views of the drag race, with dust billowing up behind the wheels and things like that. And then we have a micro view going into the car, and we can see how Mary Henry is uneasy and frightened and out of place in this drag race. So as time progresses, we look back and think, what was she doing in that car? And Mary Henry, the actress, the protagonist, being out of place is very much a theme throughout the movie, the film. Now, the cars go on the bridge. The men's car starts playing bumping the girl's car, and the girl's car goes over the bridge and into the river, and you hear this huge scream. And then there's a long search for the car, but to no avail. Mary Henry then appears, all covered in mud from head to toe. She's uneasy on her feet, trying to find her balance. And people seem to know her. They go, oh, that's Mary Henry. She eventually rents a room in the town of a landlady. And here we get a taste of the very sort of mysterious, fragmented dialogue, like, nobody's interrupting each other, nobody's talking over each other. It's not politeness, it's deliberate to create a very fragmented, otherworldly atmosphere. You'd be forgiven for thinking, well, this is just, it's just cheap budget, 1962 cheap budget film, but I think it's deliberate that way. There's this ghostly feel production throughout the movie, throughout the film. And another thing she does is she becomes a church organist, and she makes it clear that she's not taking the vow, she's not being a church goer. So here again we have the beginnings of her being out of place. And it's as though she's brought light. Everybody loves the sound of her organ playing, and it's like she's brought some light back into the church. Now, across the way there is another tenant called John Linden, who introduces himself immediately and tries to hit on her all the time. And he's quite pushy with her. and he touchy-feely and tries to get her on dates and stuff like that. And you can see that she's not suited to him. She's quite sort of erudite and well-spoken and middle class, and she's a church organist. He works in a warehouse and he's a bit of a lad. But she has what's happening here is that she increasingly sees a vision, an apparition of a ghoul, which is played by, like a zombie ghoul, which is played by Herc Harvey, with this sort of white face of makeup. He's the producer, the director, of course. And she has a sort of disturbed night of it. So when John Lyndon, the tenant, turns up with 2 mugs and a pot of coffee in the morning, she welcomes it. She welcomes the company. I'll give you a quote of what she says to him. She says, "The world is so different in the daylight, but in the dark your fantasies get so out of hand, but in the daylight everything falls back into place again." As the movie progresses, these ghoulish attacks are increasing. The strange thing is, you start toying with the idea that she may be a ghost. So you're asking yourself, well, are these characters in the film, the human beings, the minister in the church, the psychiatrist that she ends up seeing, the landlady, John Lyndon, the fellow tenant, are they a part of her ghostly imagination? Yeah, or are they fellow ghosts? Is this a reality? They're just fellow ghosts and she's just died and she just doesn't realise it. But then why do people discuss her when she's not present? Why do we see shadows cast upon her chest? Why is she casting shadows? Why do we see her in a mirror? Now, these are the questions. I'd like to put those questions to the producer and the writer to see what their answers. And perhaps it was just artistic license. That's just the best way the film would move. John Lyndon asks her on a date, and obviously she's extremely reluctant because he's not her type of person at all. But then she stops and thinks, well, I need some company for the night. In the evening particularly, and so she agrees to go on this date, but before she wants to go and practice in the organ in the church. But as she does it, as she's practicing, it's like she's overcome. She goes under hypnosis, or she's under some kind of demonic possession, if you like. And she starts playing the organ like Keith Emerson, if you know what I mean. And then the minister appears and he asks her to resign. You can't continue playing here if you're going to play music like that. And then he alludes to the fact that she has no soul. She doesn't have a soul, meaning that she's kind of like damned or condemned in some way. And it's quite one of the themes of the film is that these. Not just Herc Harvey playing the character of a ghoul, all of these ghostly, ghouly figures are after her soul. So she's out of place as a church organist. She loses her job there. That evening she has a super disturbed night of it, where she starts moving furniture up against the doors and the windows and what have you, to stop the ghouls from coming in, which is futile, of course. There is a scene with the landlady talking to a man, and she says, "Oh, you can't stay here." She won't be able to stay here. She won't be able to stay here. And the man replies, "Well, don't worry. She's going to leave the town. She's trying to leave right now." And so again, her being out of place, her being asked to leave, is her fleeing is very much a theme throughout the movie. I'm not necessarily doing this in chronological order. She goes into a shop to buy clothes, and here we get the first scene where she can't hear them, they can't. And so we're asking ourselves, is she now entering into the reality of being a ghost, and that she just doesn't know that she's dead and that she is a ghost? But who are these characters? Because in the beginning, she's having normal interactions in the shop. So I was just left asking these questions. I'll come to that at the end. That will be my part of my closing statement, if you like. And this happens later on when she tries to escape. Now, she does try to flee the town in the car, but the car starts to break down, and you're wondering whether the ghouls are a part of it, to stop her leaving, because they want her soul. And she takes it into a garage, and she insists to stay in the car for safety reasons while it's lifted up on the ramp, while the mechanic looks underneath. And we see her fleeing. She has an apparition while she's in the car, and we see her fleeing because as the film progresses, it doesn't matter whether it's daylight or night. She has just as many apparitions during the day as she does at the night, and she flees to the bus station. Suddenly, again, we have this experience where they can't hear her, she can't hear them, and she runs outside. She tries to stop a policeman on a Harley, and he just cycles by. And then there's this mysterious announcement about the next bus will be leaving from Bay, like that and then she jumps on the bus, and the bus is full of these ghouls. And then she wakes up in the car. So that is a part of a ghostly dream. Like it's clearly obvious she fell asleep in the car, and that was, or are they playing mind games with her? It's a kind of, the film leaves you with these questions. Throughout the film, she's also attracted to the carnival, this abandoned carnival, which is the title of the film, The Carnival of Souls. And she goes there, and it's very abandoned and like a ghost carnival. But then the ghouls start appearing in mass, and it's clearly obvious that they're after her soul. And she flees the carnival, making footprints across the muddy sand. And then she falls over, and there's a big imprint of her body, and her handprint. And then we see that the doctor, the psychiatrist that she'd seen earlier, the minister and a police officer standing round her, following her footprints, standing round the imprint of her body where she's no longer lying, and looking at the handprint. And she obviously ran, and then she fell over, and then nothing. And it's at that point, obviously, that the ghouly ghosts have taken her soul, her damned soul. And the final scene is the car being dredged from the river, and we see Mary Henry in the passenger seat by the window, and she's dead, and all three girls in the car are dead. To conclude, although I regard it to be a classic of its time, and one of my favourite films of its particular genre, I was asking questions like, if she's dead, then why was she so uneasy on her feet and trying to find her balance as she emerges from the river covered in mud? Why can people hear her, and they can, and she can hear them? And then why does she all of a sudden tap into this reality of being a ghost and not being able to have normal interactions with other people? Why are shadows cast upon her? Why does she cast shadows? Why can we see her in the mirror at one point? And these are the questions. What is this all part of some ghostly dream that she's having? Or are they fellow ghosts? What is happening here? These are the questions I would be putting to Herc Harvey and John Clifford. And I'm sure it would go down as artistic license. But so that's my talk on The Carnival of Souls, 1962, produced and directed by Herc Harvey, written by John Clifford, and starring Candace Hilligos, I believe it's pronounced, playing the main character, Mary Henry. And thank you very much for joining me.